Okay, Mark, you're doing the D's. Do not make the lazy D's nuts joke. It's like a year out of date. Do not make the D's nuts joke. Do not make the D's nuts joke. Do not make the D's nuts joke. Damn, Daltrey! Please end my suffering. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of What Mark Spins, my vinyl collection series. Today I'm on the D's, so let's get this started. First up is a solo album from Roger Daltrey of The Who called One of the Boys. I'm not really familiar with Roger Daltrey's solo work outside of this album, and doesn't seem to be one of his more talked about solo albums, even if solo work isn't really talked about much in general. I just found this for a couple bucks at the record store, figured I'd pick it up just out of curiosity. It's good, I'll definitely say that. But it sounds like he really wanted to make, like, his Elton John album with this. That's really the best way I can describe it. Like, I'm going to talk about my Elton John records when I get into this, but I feel like there was some cocaine-fueled party in England in 1976, and, like, Roger and Elton John were there, and they both had maps to the recording studio they were going to go to for the next day, and they got the addresses switched. And Roger ended up recording this album, and Elton John wound up doing Rock of the Westies. That's just my little fan conspiracy theory. And something really weird about this pressing in particular, something happened with this that I never had with any other record out of my years of collecting. As the vinyl was turning, it kept hitting, I kept hearing like a every time that it would turn around. And I realized that part of the vinyl was like hitting a part of the turntable, like, needle area, which I had never happened before. I guess it was like some weird malfunction at the record plant or something, but I had to take a pair of scissors, like actual scissors, and cut the vinyl in certain places until I could play it without a distracting noise coming in every 3 seconds. And I don't know, I just felt like saying that, because that's a really weird thing. I'm curious, have you guys ever dealt with something like that? I don't know. I'm curious. Either way, this is still a really good record. Oh, and just a heads up, starting last episode, I decided that I'm going to start linking a song from each record I talk about in the description down there. So if you're curious, then all the songs linked down there. Okay, moving on. Next up is a record I talked about in my Amoeba video, my What's in My Bag video from a few months ago, the Decemberists Flora Songs EP. This is a 5-song, 10-inch EP that came out last year, I guess sort of as an extra thing with What a Terrible World, What a Beautiful World, which, like I said in a couple of videos, I think is a really overlooked Decemberists album. I thought it was a really great record. This is basically just more really good Decemberists songs for the most part. I will say that there are a couple surprises on there, like the song Fits and Starts is probably the most raucous I've ever heard the Decemberists sound. At least, I'm not sure how it is on the early stuff, but at least from what I've heard. It's a lot of fun, a lot of energy on that song. And you also got kind of a classic, like, sweet, folky love song on Why Would I Now, which is like the single from this thing, and some classic December storytelling on the last 2 tracks here, The Harrowed and the Haunted and Stateside. Yeah, and I wouldn't complain if a couple of these songs got, like, switched out with a couple of the songs from What a Terrible World. But just as is, it's a pretty good EP on its own. Definitely recommend picking it up. Okay, next up we got Deep Purple, Machine Head. Not too much to say about this, honestly. Just like a classic hard rock and arguably early metal album, though I personally think it's more on like the hard rock and blues rock side of things. Obviously it's got classic songs on it, like Smoke on the Water, obviously, Highway Star, as well as Space Truckin', which are a couple more underrated songs that I really like, even though those are kind of singles too, I think. There's still like a couple songs on here that I think are just like, do like a bluesy structure thing to kind of pad the album out. I think that's the case on a couple songs here. But other than that, it's just a really seminal early hard rock album. I'm glad I got on vinyl. And it's also awesome to see these guys finally get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Okay, next up's a band that I've talked about my fandom of a couple times on this channel before. Leppard, On Through the Night. Ow. like I've said, this is basically one of the first bands that I got into, thanks to my parents. And when I saw one of their albums on vinyl at the record store about a year ago, I figured that was an awesome opportunity to pick this thing up. This is their first album from 1980, I believe. If you ever kinda listened to Def Leppard and thought they were too poppy, they were like, oh, they're just the hair metal kind of like, you know, Pour Some Sugar on Me, freaking Hysteria kind of thing, and just weren't into that. You're looking for something a little heavier, this is definitely an album to get into. Back when they were releasing this and later on High and Dry, which I think is a slightly better album, but this is still worth checking out. They were kind of lumped into that whole new wave of British heavy metal thing, believe it or not, alongside bands like, you know, Iron Maiden, Motorhead, and all that. Even if they were a little more accessible, of course, when they decided to move away from that, people got mad. But honestly, if you really break down these songs at their core, they're basically like a glam rock band, or like just like a power pop rock kind of band, just writing really fast riffs and playing at really fast tempos. And aside from that, it's just a really fun, catchy record that happens to have that kind of fast, heavy kind of aesthetic to it, I guess. Classic songs like Rock Brigade, Wasted, and some surprisingly ambitious stuff on here, like When the Walls Came Tumbling Down and Overture, which go to like 6-7 minutes. Again, High and Dry is probably a better example of their heavier side, but this is definitely not a bad place to go to if you want more of their less poppy side. Though arguably Slang is their least poppy album in my opinion, but whatever, that's a whole other thing. Next up we got Diesel, What's in the Tank. This is another record alongside that Blood Rock one that my dad had in his collection when he initially passed it down to me, that even he kind of had no idea that he even had, or that he didn't even know about. This is a Dutch band, I remember that. I actually remember, I saw a clip of them playing one song from this, Down in the Silver Mine, and it's just like from this kids show from Holland where it's like the most obvious lip syncing. Like it was pretty clear they didn't even have their instruments plugged in, like there weren't even any like, chords, and like dancers with pickaxes jumping around. It was a different time. It was a much lighter time, I'll just say that. They had one top 40 hit in the US called Sausalito Summer Night, which is the first track on here. That's another one I'll link down there. I think that's like a really underrated like classic rock gem of a song. For some reason they didn't even get like the known as a one-hit wonder status. It was just like, just this weird, just kind of gets swept under the rug. But yeah, I mean, if you pick this up for cheap, it's definitely worth checking out. And the last record here. So some of you guys might remember that last summer I went to John from Air TV's place over in North Carolina. So on the last day on the way to his house, he said there was a record store kind of in the area he just moved to that he'd been wanting to get around to go to. So we decided to stop by there. I picked up a couple records. I believe one of the Alice Cooper ones was one of them. And the other one that I decided to pick up that I saw for like $2 was the first Duran Duran record. Duran Duran, kind of another 80s band that I am a fan of, that not a lot of people might expect someone born in 1996 to be a fan of, alongside Def Leppard. Yeah, this is their first album. The singles on it, like Girls on Film, Planet Earth, classic songs right there. Apparently this was like a 1983 like re-release for the US, like after they blew up more. I mean, look at this look at like the logo work they were working with in the early 80s, just like the name written out, and then written out again, but italicized. I wouldn't say this is my favorite Duran Duran album. I'd go to something like Rio, obviously. Even All You Need Is Now was really good. That actually goes in a couple directions they might not expect. Like, the last track on here, Tel Aviv, is like this 5-6 minute, like, instrumental that swells a bit more than you'd expect in a Duran Duran song. Luckily, I haven't really talked about that many records here that I outright don't like. And that's going to do it for this episode of What Mark Spins. I'm going to go on to the E's, maybe F's next, we'll see, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!